Amidst a furious blizzard, a black delivery driver, Malik Johnson, was on his way home when he spotted an elderly woman, Margaret, shivering alone on a desolate road. While others passed by, he instinctively turned his truck around, offering her shelter from the biting cold. Discovering she was desperate to reach the hospital for her daughter's childbirth, he bravely drove her through the storm, arriving just in the nick of time. Little did he know her daughter was the state governor, and his simple act of kindness was about to change everything. The storm had consumed everything: the road, the sky, the city's sounds. Malik could barely see through the swirling snow as he navigated his delivery van. The heater struggled, a feeble hum against the pervasive chill that seeped into his bones. It was just past 9 p.m., yet the streets of Bloomington, Minnesota felt utterly deserted. Streetlights, like lonely sentinels, offered halos of orange light that barely pierced the blizzard. Most people had retreated to their warm homes, but not Malik. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, easing down a side street, his tires groaning on the icy road. His gloved fingers, stiff from the cold and a grueling 12-hour shift, barely registered the discomfort. He hadn't eaten all day, but one last delivery remained, and quitting early simply wasn't in his nature. Malik, 30, lean, quiet and thoughtful, was a man accustomed to being overlooked. His deep brown skin, steady, observant eyes, and a hint of stubble on his jaw spoke of a man who observed the world before speaking. His breath escaped in pale clouds within the van. Dressed for survival in a navy parka with faded Anderson Freight Co. letters and a thick beanie pulled low, he turned down the crackling radio. He preferred the silence. Out here, people rarely spoke to drivers like him unless absolutely necessary. A signature, a nod, sometimes not even that. Being invisible was part of the job. Then he saw her, a figure in the snow, moving slowly, almost stumbling. It took a second to register. An old woman hunched against the wind, clad in a loose, long tan coat, her scarf whipping behind her. One hand clutched a canvas bag to her chest, the other barely shielding her face. Malik's foot eased off the gas. "What the hell?" he muttered. She wasn't dressed for this weather, not even close, and she was alone. No houses, no traffic, just that small, bent figure in the middle of a Minnesota snowstorm. A car passed in the opposite direction, not slowing, not swerving. Malik's heart pounded. He checked his rearview mirror. The woman had stopped or perhaps stumbled. He couldn't tell. He drove another 30 feet, then stopped. For a moment he sat still, hands on the wheel, staring ahead as the wipers screeched, snow slamming against the glass. His mind was split. One voice urged, "Keep going. She's not your problem. Help and it backfires, you'll be blamed." The other whispered, "That could be someone's mom." He clenched his jaw, threw the van into reverse and slowly backed towards her, the hazard lights clicking on. He parked, climbed out, and was hit by a wall of wind that nearly ripped the door from his hand. Snow bit into his cheeks, the road slick and uneven beneath his boots. "Ma'am," he called out. No answer. He walked closer, careful not to startle her. "Ma'am, are you okay?" The woman looked up, her eyes pale, a little confused but not frightened. Her thin face, red from the cold, showed wisps of white hair clinging to her temples beneath a gray knit cap. I'm all right," she said softly, her voice dry and hoarse from the wind. "Just heading to the hospital." He blinked. "The hospital, ma'am? That's miles away." She nodded slowly as if convincing herself. "My daughter. She's having a baby tonight." Malik's chest tightened. The way she clutched that bag, the tremble in her lips. It wasn't stubbornness, it was desperation. "You can't walk there, not in this weather. Let me drive you." "No," she whispered, shaking her head weakly. "I don't want to be a burden." He took a step closer. "You're not." She looked at him for a long second, her eyes searching his face, perhaps measuring something she couldn't name. Then with a slow nod she gave in. He reached out his arm, her hand was icy and trembling. She leaned into him gently, more tired than she wanted to admit. Together they walked back to the van, the storm swirling around them, indifferent to their plight. Malik opened the door, helped her climb in, then closed it gently and jogged around to the driver's side. Inside, the heater hummed to life and she let out a small breath of relief. "What's your name, ma'am?" he asked. She pulled the scarf from her face, smiling faintly. "Margaret." He nodded. "All right, Miss Margaret, let's get you warm." Outside, the snow continued to fall, but inside that old van for the first time that night there was warmth. Not from the heater but from something far quieter, far stronger, something the storm couldn't touch. The van rolled slowly through the snow-covered streets, its headlights carving soft yellow paths through the storm. Inside, silence settled between them, broken only by the heater's hum and the occasional rattle of the windshield wipers. Malik kept one hand on the steering wheel, eyes scanning the road, but every few seconds he glanced at Margaret. She sat stiffly, both hands clutching the canvas bag on her lap. Her coat was soaked at the edges and the scarf once tightly wrapped now hung loose, revealing a small golden cross. Her face was still red from the cold, but her eyes had softened. She stared ahead, not truly seeing anything, just breathing, letting the warmth slowly return to her bones. "You warm enough?" Malik asked, keeping his tone light. She nodded, her voice low. "Yes, thank you, young man. Thank you." He gave a small smile. "You don't have to thank me. I'm just glad I came back when I did." Margaret's eyes drifted toward the window. Snow rushed past like a fast-moving dream. "I've walked that road before years ago, but I didn't think the storm would get this bad." She paused, then added quieter, "I didn't want to wait, not tonight." Malik didn't say anything right away, respecting the weight in her words. He'd heard that kind of voice before, the kind where people spoke more to themselves than to anyone else. After a few turns he asked, "You said your daughter's in the hospital?" Margaret nodded. "Yes, she went into labor this afternoon. Her name is Anna. She's my only child." He glanced over again. "She lives far from you?" "No," she said softly, "only 10 minutes by car usually. But tonight." Her voice trailed off. "I don't have a car anymore, haven't driven in years. She told me to stay home, said the storm was getting worse, but I couldn't. I just couldn't." There was something in the way she said it that caught him. Not fear exactly, more like urgency, a need that didn't want to be questioned. Malik kept his hands on the wheel, turning carefully onto a narrower road leading out toward the edge of town. "Do you live nearby?" "I do," she said and pointed ahead. "The road passes that gas station, then a left at the bend, a little greenhouse with the wood chimney." He followed her directions, and within a few minutes, they pulled up in front of a small, weathered cottage tucked behind a patch of bare trees. The porch light was off, but a faint glow came from a side window. The roof was covered in snow and the mailbox was almost buried. The place was modest but not abandoned. It looked lived in, cared for. Malik parked the van at the end of the short driveway and turned toward her. "You sure you want to go in? I can drive you straight to the hospital." Margaret shook her head. "I need to get something first. It'll only take a minute." "I'll come with you," he said, already opening his door. She started to protest but then nodded, too tired to argue. They stepped back into the cold and Margaret led him to the front door. She fumbled with the keys, her hands still unsteady. Malik gently took them and unlocked the door for her. Inside, the warmth was immediate, not from central heating but from something older. A space heater hummed in the corner and a wood stove crackled faintly in the kitchen. The place smelled faintly of cedar and something sweet like tea and old cookies. Photos lined the walls. Framed pictures of a young girl in graduation robes, then later in uniform, and one where she stood at a podium with a microphone, smiling confidently. Malik glanced at it but said nothing. Margaret set her canvas bag down on the kitchen table and pulled out a folded shawl, a thermos and a small pink box wrapped in ribbon. "This is for her," she said, holding up the box. "I made it months ago. It's a blanket for the baby. Took me almost 6 weeks." Malik's throat tightened just a little. She looked up at him. "I was afraid if I waited until morning I might miss the moment. I know it's silly, she's a grown woman, but she's still my baby." "It's not silly," Malik said quietly. "Not at all." Margaret smiled, and for the first time he saw the strength beneath her tiredness. She wasn't weak, she was worn perhaps but not broken. He helped her gather the things, placing the thermos and the pink box gently back in her bag. As they turned to leave, Malik noticed a photo on the fridge. It was the same woman from the podium, only this time she was shaking hands with a group of officials. The seal in the background said, "State of Minnesota." He recognized the emblem. It belonged to the governor's office. He frowned slightly but said nothing, just followed Margaret back out into the cold. The wind had picked up, sharper now, biting harder. Malik opened the van door and helped her back in before starting the engine. He hesitated. You sure it's all right to go now? Roads aren't going to get easier. Margaret nodded firmly. I've come this far, Mr. Malik. Thank you, Malik, she said, settling back in the seat. As they pulled away from the cottage, the house disappeared into the snow behind them. The storm was getting worse, but Malik didn't turn back. He watched the road, one hand steady on the wheel, while Margaret sat beside him, her hands folded over the little pink box. Neither of them spoke for a while, but in the quiet, there was something stronger than words. Two strangers brought together not by fate or coincidence, but by the simple refusal to let someone walk alone. The snow was coming down harder now, thick as cotton, swirling in wild gusts that rocked the van. Malik leaned forward, squinting through the smeared windshield. The defroster was barely keeping up. Every few minutes he had to wipe the inside of the glass with his sleeve to maintain a sliver of clear vision. Margaret sat beside him, bundled tightly, holding her canvas bag as if it were the most fragile thing in the world. The pink box was tucked carefully inside, pressed against her ribs. She didn't speak, but every few minutes he heard her breathe in sharply, bracing herself against something heavier than the storm. Still all right back there? He asked, glancing over without taking his eyes off the road for long. She nodded, her voice barely audible. Yes, just trying to stay calm. Malik pressed his lips together and focused on the road. The snowplows hadn't reached this far out. The van's tires crunched over uneven snow, and every so often, the vehicle slipped slightly, enough to whiten his knuckles on the wheel. Hospital's about 15 minutes out, he said. 20 if the road gets worse. Margaret closed her eyes for a second, then opened them again. I should have told her I was coming, but if I had, she would have sent someone to stop me. You think she wouldn't want you there? No, she said quietly. I think she wants me safe. That's the thing about being strong your whole life. People forget you still need to show up for your children even when they've grown up. Malik thought about that as he turned onto a stretch of road with no lights and no markings, just a vast blanket of white in every direction. His breathing grew shallower, the pressure in his chest rising with each mile. He'd driven in tough weather before, back when he worked for a medical transport service, but this storm felt different. He wasn't carrying equipment, he was carrying someone's mother. The van jerked slightly to the right. Malik quickly turned the wheel, gently correcting without slamming the brakes. He couldn't afford to panic, not with her next to him. Margaret didn't seem to notice, or perhaps she had but didn't flinch. She was staring straight ahead now, as if the road itself had her full attention. Can I ask something? He said after a moment. She looked over. The picture on your fridge? He continued, his voice careful. Your daughter, she's someone important, isn't she? Margaret gave a faint smile. She is, to me anyway. I mean, that seal behind her looked like something official. Her shoulders lifted in a quiet sigh. She's the governor. Elected last year. Youngest in the state's history, they said. Smart, driven, stubborn as her father was. She paused, a flicker of memory moving through her eyes. She's doing good things, trying to help people that get left behind like you probably feel most days. Malik didn't say anything to that. He didn't need to. He'd felt invisible so often he'd stopped keeping track, but hearing her say it aloud, plain and direct, caught him off guard. He nodded once. You proud of her? Margaret smiled again, this time fuller. Every day. Even when we argue, even when she thinks I don't understand the world she works in. I'm proud of her. But tonight I just wanted her to know she's not alone. That no matter how many people vote for her or stand behind her podiums, she's still someone's little girl, and her mother is still coming. Silence returned, heavy but warm. Malik's jaw tightened as he watched the snow whip past the headlights. The wind had picked up, sending sharp bursts of powder across the windshield. He had to slow down more than once, and twice he felt the tires lose grip before catching again. They passed a fallen tree branch in the middle of the road. He veered slightly, heart pounding, gripping the wheel until the van steadied. Margaret reached out once, her hand brushing the dashboard, but she didn't speak. Up ahead he saw flashing lights, a barricade, 2 highway patrol cars with emergency lights blinking red and blue through the snow. He eased the van to a stop. A trooper stepped forward, coat pulled tight, face half covered in a scarf. Malik rolled down the window. Sir, road's closed, the trooper said. Storm's too strong. We're not letting anyone through without an emergency permit. Malik opened his mouth to respond, but Margaret beat him to it. Her voice, though raspy, carried authority. My name is Margaret Holloway. My daughter is in labor. She's the governor of this state, and I am not missing the birth of my first grandchild because of snow. The trooper hesitated, blinked, looked from her to Malik, then back again. Hold on, ma'am, he said, stepping back to his radio. Malik raised his eyebrows slightly. Margaret didn't look away. A moment later, the officer returned, waving them forward. Proceed carefully, he said. Hospital's still open. They're expecting you now. Malik nodded once and rolled up the window. The van moved forward, tires groaning under the snow. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. The road twisted, climbed slightly, then dipped toward the city. Through the fogged glass, Malik could see the faint glow of hospital lights ahead, distant, steady like a beacon. He glanced over at Margaret. She was gripping her bag tighter now, eyes bright, lips pressed into a line, her heart racing though she didn't show it. Malik exhaled, focused on the road. The worst part was almost over, but in his chest the tension didn't lift. It deepened because something told him that when they walked through those hospital doors, he was going to learn something that would stay with him longer than this storm ever could. The automatic doors slid open with a soft hiss, and warm air rushed out to meet them as Malik guided Margaret through the hospital entrance. His coat was soaked through at the shoulders, snow melting down his collar, but he barely noticed. His hand hovered just behind Margaret's back as she stepped inside slowly, the soft soles of her boots squeaking on the polished tile. The bright fluorescent lights above flickered for half a second before stabilizing, and for a moment, the quiet of the hospital lobby swallowed them whole. It was nearly 2:30 in the morning. The waiting room was mostly empty. Just one man asleep in a corner chair and a nurse behind the reception desk typing into a computer with glazed eyes. Christmas garlands hung on the wall behind her, a little lopsided, and a muted television showed a rerun of local news on the wall above the vending machines. Malik recognized the woman on screen. He'd seen her face on billboards during the last election. Poised, sharp, determined, Anna Holloway, governor of Minnesota. Can I help you? The nurse asked, standing slowly. Her eyes moved from Malik to Margaret, her expression shifting almost instantly. We're here to see Anna Holloway, Malik said. This is her mother. She just had a baby. The nurse blinked twice, clearly processing what she just heard. The governor? She asked, looking at Margaret again, this time with new eyes. Margaret gave a small smile, her cheeks still flushed from the cold. She doesn't know I'm coming. I didn't call ahead. Before the nurse could respond, another voice cut through the space behind them. Oh my God, Mrs. Holloway. A young nurse in pink scrubs had just entered from the hallway leading to the maternity wing. Her eyes widened as she hurried over, concern mixed with something almost like awe. They've been looking for you for hours. The governor's been asking about you between contractions. She thought something happened when you didn't answer her call. I left the phone at home, Margaret said softly, her voice cracking just a little. I didn't want to waste time. The nurse reached for her gently. Come on. She's awake. She had a little girl, 6 pounds, perfect as can be. I'll take you to her. Margaret looked back at Malik. I'll wait here, he said, nodding. You go. Her eyes lingered on him, grateful but also conflicted. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came. Instead, she gave his hand a small squeeze, then followed the nurse down the hallway, her canvas bag still clutched tightly under one arm. Malik sat down on the nearest bench. The lobby was quiet again, except for the TV and the occasional beep of a distant monitor. His back ached and his fingers were still numb, but it didn't matter. Something inside him had settled. The kind of quiet you feel after doing something that mattered even if no one else noticed. Except someone had noticed. Another nurse, a tall man in blue scrubs, walked past and gave him a nod that lingered a little longer than usual. Then a security guard from the entrance peeked into the lobby, looked at Malik and gave a quick, respectful nod too. No questions, no suspicion, just a moment of recognition. He didn't realize how rare that felt until now. 20 minutes passed, then 30. He didn't look at his phone. He didn't need distraction. He just waited, arms crossed, watching the empty hallway. Then the doors at the end of the corridor opened. Malik stood up instinctively. Margaret appeared first, slower now but steadier, and behind her Anna Holloway. No press, no guards, just her, hair tied back, face still pale from labor, wearing a loose blue hospital gown, holding a tiny bundle of white cloth in her arms. She looked exhausted and radiant. When her eyes landed on Malik, she paused just for a moment as if she had to process who he was, what this moment meant. Then she walked forward, each step deliberate. The baby stirred against her chest. "You're Malik?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "Yes, ma'am." She looked at her mother, then back at him. "I've been trying to call her all night. We thought she got stuck in the storm or worse." Malik said nothing. It wasn't his place to explain what she'd been willing to risk. Margaret stepped closer to her daughter and gently touched the baby's back. "She's perfect," she whispered. Anna smiled. "She's strong like her grandmother." There was a silence that settled over them. Not awkward, not cold, just full, as if there were too many things that didn't need saying out loud. Anna looked back at Malik. "My mother says you found her walking in the middle of the storm, that you brought her home, then drove her here. Is that true?" He nodded once, slow and steady. "She would have frozen out there," Anna said, her voice a little hoarse. "And I would have had to go through this without her." Malik met her gaze. "She said she had to be here. I just gave her a ride." Anna stepped closer and offered her hand. "Well, I don't care what you call it. You made sure my mother was there to hold my baby. That means something." Malik took her hand, her grip was firm. "I'd like to thank you properly," she said. "There's going to be a press conference later today, but before any of that I just wanted to see you." Margaret touched Anna's arm gently. "He didn't do it for cameras." "I know," Anna said, looking back at him. "That's why it matters." Malik looked down at the baby, still asleep, her tiny face just visible above the blanket's edge. A small pink hat with a hospital logo covered her head. She looked peaceful, safe. For a moment his chest tightened, not from exhaustion, but from something he hadn't let himself feel in a long time, that what he did mattered, that someone saw it. Anna stepped back. "Would you like to meet her?" He hesitated. "I should probably let you rest. She'll want to know this story one day," Margaret said softly, "about how someone showed up when no one else would." Malik stepped forward and looked at the baby again, this time closer. He didn't touch her, just watched her breathe. Then he looked up at Anna. "You got a name for her yet?" Anna smiled, looked at her mother, then back at him. "We were thinking Grace." Malik nodded. "That's a good name." And for the first time that night, the storm outside no longer felt like the thing they had to survive. It felt like the thing that had brought them all together. The snow had stopped by morning. What had once been a fierce white storm now lay still across the city like a clean sheet pulled over the past. The streets glistened under the pale sun, and the world, for a few hours, moved slower, as if it too was reflecting on the night before. Malik stood at the edge of the State House steps, his delivery jacket freshly washed, the name patch still frayed but clean. He wasn't used to wearing anything other than work boots and carrying boxes, and now he was being asked to stand before cameras, behind microphones, beside flags. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, his breath visible in the cold morning air, hands tucked into his pockets to hide the nervous twitch in his fingers. A security officer gently ushered him forward as the governor stepped to the podium. Anna Holloway wore a simple gray coat, her hair pulled back, her expression firm but warm. Margaret stood a few steps behind her, gloved hands folded together, the same canvas bag resting at her side. The press conference had drawn more attention than expected. It wasn't just local news. National reporters had shown up after hearing that the governor had paused official duties to recognize a quiet act of heroism in the middle of a storm. Cameras clicked, reporters adjusted their earpieces, but for Malik none of it mattered. His eyes were fixed on Margaret, who nodded gently when their eyes met. "Last night," Anna began, her voice carrying through the quiet square, "a man most of you have never heard of reminded me why public service matters, why humanity still matters." While most people were safe inside, while the city shut down and the roads closed, Malik Johnson turned his van around. Not because anyone asked him to, not because he was paid to, but because he saw someone most people would have driven past, and decided she mattered. She paused, glancing toward him. That someone was my mother. And because of him she was able to be there when her granddaughter came into the world. A murmur moved through the crowd. Malik shifted again, uncomfortable but standing tall. Anna continued, "We talk often about policy, budgets, power, but leadership begins with empathy, action, sacrifice." Mr. Johnson reminded me, and I hope reminded all of us, that decency doesn't need a title. It just needs courage. She turned to him and extended a small plaque engraved in silver. He took it hesitantly, reading the words, "In recognition of uncommon kindness in the face of a common storm." The applause was quiet at first, then grew, not explosive, not performative, but real, full of something rarely given freely: respect. Malik didn't speak. He simply nodded, then stepped back beside Margaret. She reached for his hand without a word, squeezing it once. After the cameras shut down and the press began to disperse, Anna walked over and pulled him aside. "You going back to work today?" she asked. Malik gave a small smile. "Same route, different weather. You ever think about doing something different?" "Sometimes," he said, "but people still need their groceries even in the snow." She nodded. "Well, if you ever want a different kind of job, something where more people listen when you speak, let me know." He didn't promise anything, he didn't decline. He just nodded again, the way people do when they're used to carrying weight alone but aren't sure what it means to set it down. Later that afternoon, Malik returned to his van. The roads were clearer now, the deliveries lighter. But as he slid into the driver's seat and looked out over the quiet city, the plaque resting in the passenger seat, he felt something shift inside him. Not pride exactly, and not relief, just acknowledgement. A simple truth, that for once in a world quick to overlook men like him, someone had seen what he did. Not with headlines, not with hashtags, but with presence, real human presence. He started the engine. Outside, the city breathed. The storm was gone, but its memory lingered. In the hands that had reached out, in the road turned back on, and in the name Grace whispered by a governor born in a blizzard, cradled by a mother who had walked through the night, and carried by a man who simply didn't keep driving. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.